Hello and welcome to the Strategy Gamer podcast, where we talk about good strategy games, bad strategy games, and everything in between. My guest today is the Happy Hedonist, further known as the Hedonist, good friend of mine from the Something Awful forums. Say hello, Hedonist.
Hello.
And he is recording from an automobile, so hopefully he doesn't end up in the ditch or smacked against an embankment.
I hope so.
Today we're going to talk about the pre-World War I naval simulator Rule the Waves, distributed by the NWS Wargaming store. So in a nutshell, Hedonist, what is Rule the Waves?
Rule the Waves is a World War I era naval game where you can design your own ships, and it's all on top of like a Europa Universalis grand strategy. I don't know what the word. What am I looking for?
Yeah,
I guess that's it.
Yeah, and kind of the interesting part is playing a naval bureaucrat, some high-level admiral like a Jackie Fisher, and you're calling the shots, but you're not in charge. You can call some of the shots. We think we should do this. Politics aside, you can be like, we should do this, or ideas, but you don't actually have control. Moving chits around the map, or calling out stuff like that.
No. Yep. You're just given not every turn, but more often than not, you're given there's a pop-up that comes up, and there's a series of choices you can make. The choices typically they'll either increase your budget or tension levels, or you can choose the cop-out, which will decrease your prestige. If your prestige hits 0, you lose. So.
Yeah, and that's really the whole thing, is getting your prestige up and keeping it there and hopefully winning a war.
Yeah.
Now, it's worth describing the purchase process on this game because it's not on Steam and it's not on Matrix, and it's kind of unlike any other game that you're likely to run into. It's weird.
It is. It's by NWS. What does that stand for? I forget. It's Naval Warfare
Simulations or something like that.
Something like that, yeah. And I know in the past I've actually bought board games and like John Tiller games from them because they sell them a little bit, or probably sell them a little bit cheaper than you can get somewhere else. I didn't even realize they wrote software and developed games until I think it was Steam and Iron. And so you basically send this guy money through PayPal, and usually within hours, he'll send you a download link and a serial number. So it's quite, it's very not conventional, I guess.
No, it's kind of a mid-1990s Web 0.5 web commerce setup, like a Yahoo store thing. But, it works. And like you said, the dude's kind of on the ball. But I'm not sure if it's distributed by NWS. I don't think they have anything to do with development.
Yeah. Yep. And that all came from Steam and Iron, I believe, is the engine, the combat engine. That came out, I don't remember what year it was. It was like 2011, 2012. Was that long ago?
Yeah, something like that. It was kind of just below the radar like that. It didn't push a lot of buttons, and I think without this extra layer it has, with Waves has, Steam and Iron is just another naval simulator.
Yeah, it was a pretty good one, though. I remember it getting, it got props on, some certain small forums and stuff. And then the campaign layer for Steam and Iron came out, and that seemed to get more attention. People seemed to like it more. And, went from there.
When I was first introduced, wasn't even aware of Steam and Iron. I came at it totally from the Rule of Waves side. And people just started coming out and saying, oh my God, this game is amazing. It's addicting and I just can't stop playing it. I looked at it and kind of, order process threw me off a little bit. And then I dumped the $20 on it and it blew me away.
Yeah, me too. I had downloaded the Steam and Iron demo, and I knew right away that it was something that would probably be fun, but it was one of those things where it was overpriced. I think it was $35, and I had thought I'll get maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes out of this and then be bored. So I never did pick it up. But I think it was the thread on Something Awful that actually got me to put down some money and buy Rule of the Waves. And yeah, it's been probably my most played game since I've bought it. So definitely a good purchase.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about the interface in a moment, but it's one of those games where it shows that if you have a great design, you don't necessarily need a great user interface, especially if all the little pieces of the board match well.
Yeah. The interface, I mean, if you grew up using Windows 95, then it all makes sense. But
yeah, I mean, it really does look like a mid-1990s piece of accounting software.
It does. It absolutely does. And it works. It works pretty well. There's some quirks here and there that are kind of bothersome. But other than that, I mean, it's definitely functional. And, yeah, it's not bad.
So once you're staring at it, you're kind of given a list of your ships, and you can click over to a map of the globe, and it kind of tells you where people are at. But in 1900, you probably don't have oil, and your technology kind of sucks, and then you're kind of brought into this era where you got to start designing a ship, and every turn your research might unlock a piece of technology, or it might unlock a little bonus. So, I mean, how do you think that system works?
I think it works pretty well, actually. I like the fact that when you do sit down to design a ship, you do it knowing that by the time that ship is completed, it is going to be obsolete. So you really have to do a lot of like forward planning and decide what's important. And yeah, actually, I really like that part of it.
And like you said, it's really hard to do because these ships take years to build in the game. So just like in real life, you might get research that says, well, you just got 12-inch guns. But you know in 2 years you're going to have 13-inch guns.
Yeah.
But you got to build it. You have to, because if a war fires up between then, you're stuck. Or maybe it doesn't.
Absolutely. I'm always like trying to wait for, the next level of fire control, but which can get you in trouble sometime if you wait too long. So,
I just had a game where I was playing Italy, and we went to war against France. And like you said, our fire control wasn't quite there. So you would just basically have to get into just, brawling range where, under 1,000 meters. And then they still couldn't hit anything. So I really had to pick the engagements. And I guess that's kind of a cool thing to bring. The engagements, you don't get to choose them as the naval commander.
Yeah, which actually really bothered me at first because you do a lot of small, like, cruiser engagements and stuff. And the cruiser engagements can get quite large once you get battle cruisers and stuff. But I know initially I didn't particularly care for that. Now I actually appreciate it. And the one mission that bothers me is the bombardment. I don't know how you feel about that, but I don't think it's implemented well, and it's just kind of boring. And
yeah, especially when you get the bombardment mission and all you have is destroyers.
Yes.
Yeah, then it's impossible.
It is. So you just end up, basically turning around and waiting for the counter to count down so you can get on to the next mission.
Yeah. I mean, it's... For the most part, I think it works pretty well. I mean, I think, like you said, at first you feel like you should be sending ships around the globe, but in reality, it wouldn't be much fun.
No, and reading, after reading the little bit of the history I have read, most of the engagements were small, so it does make sense in that regard.
Yeah, and I mean, for the most part, it was having a navy in standing. Not so much that it could go out and beat somebody down, but that it might. And it was more powerful with that thought in mind than it was potentially sending it out and losing it.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you start out, you've got all the tensions are kind of low, and you can kind of pick on somebody if you want. But usually, at least I go into it and I say, well, I'm here to get in a naval battle, so I want to pick on somebody that's a little smaller than myself or bigger than myself. I mean, do you go along the same thing, or are you always playing Britain, or how do you handle it?
No, I play basically everybody. It just depends on the mood I'm in. I like to crank the tension. I like to get everybody all fired up, and then kind of whatever happens, and sometimes it's 2-on-1 and it gets really ugly. But yeah, I kind of play real aggressively and just get everybody all fired up right at the beginning. Because I mean, that's the thing. When if you're not at war, you're just pushing next or next turn, and that's not exactly exciting. So, I like to dig right in and get some war started.
I do like that tension when you do hit next turn. And you know that you just need a few more turns and you hope that war just get kickoff yet. You might have a battleship that's almost done or a workup that's almost ready and you're like, oh man, do I diffuse the tension but then I lose prestige? It's a pretty good balance.
It is, yeah, it definitely is. Especially when you have multiple countries that are right at the cusp of declaring, and when it's like America and Great Britain. I hate going to war with America because I usually play a European country or Japan, and they're just so far away, and you have to really pay attention to like where your ships are, and it's just.
Yeah, I think that's one area where the game starts to fall apart. Well, as soon as you have to start sending things down on the other side of the world, and that interface is kind of wonky.
It is. Yep, agreed.
So when you do finally go to war, you're automatically forced to, send so many people on anti-submarine warfare. And I should mention, too, subs are kind of just like a number. You don't actually do design on subs. They're just kind of there.
Yeah. Yep, you just build them, and then I think there's 3 settings. There's like prize, unrestricted, and what's the other one? Coastal or something like that?
Yeah, you've got prize rules, unrestricted war, and what's it called? The normal one, fleet support. That's what it is.
Okay, fleet support. Yeah, so I typically only use unrestricted and just let them do their thing.
Yeah. I mean, usually I'll try to have them support the fleet because every so often they'll do something cool, but pretty much you're stuck just hoping that they're going to whittle away at the shipping, and that's just victory points. There's no industrial modeling or anything like that beyond the size of the shipyard.
Yeah, what is the difference between prize and unrestricted actually? Because when you pick unrestricted, they basically act as raiders, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I think when they talk prize rules, that's where the submarine would actually surface, state their intentions, allow the crew to get out, get into lifeboats, and then either torpedo it and take it, or do something along that lines.
Okay, all right.
I want to say it's one of them holdovers from the Victorian age where they saw submarines as uncivilized.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, I did have one game where I tried going like strictly submarines and saying, well, I'm going to build as many subs as I can and really just scrap the Navy. But what I found was the government kept wanting me to make ships. You just can't kind of do your own thing. The government will come out and say, hey, you know what? The defense minister really wants an armored cruiser.
Yeah, they do. I have done it several times with Japan, actually, and tried to do just tons of submarines and then cruisers. And I was successful once. But, yeah, usually they want you to build some battleships and stuff, which, you can get away with just building the minimum or just ignoring them. If you're doing well enough and your prestige is high enough, you can basically just ignore them and take the prestige hit and do what you want.
Yeah, that's true, but you kind of miss out on being the politician or the naval bureaucrat side of things.
You do, yeah.
Now, graphics-wise, you've pretty much got a 2D view and it's Google Maps, and you're looking down, but you can actually see like where the turrets are going, and you can see the rounds hitting and everything. Do you kind of zoom in and watch it? Do you dial in on these battles, or are you just zoomed out all the way?
No, it's quite useful actually to zoom in because you can see, like you said, you can see what your turrets are doing and stuff, and see it. If a turret is disabled, it'll be black on the ship, so maybe I need to be, sometimes you want to be port facing the enemy, or you want to turn around and have your starboard facing the enemy. That way you get more turrets on them. So it's quite useful, and I zoom in quite often, actually. On the big fleet battles and stuff, it's hard because there's just so many ships, especially if you play like very large fleets, which I do mostly. So, yeah.
That's interesting you bring it up, because normally I play medium or small because I think it's just a little too much to try to direct everything all at once.
It can be. I guess just a lot of use of AI. I like to flip the AI off and on. So when it does get hairy, you just throw some ships on AI and play almost like, rear admiral until everybody is lined up like they should be and in a good formation. Then I'll start flipping over into manual control again.
Okay, yeah, I mean that's definitely a good way to do it. I've never had frame rate issues or anything like that. It just felt kind of overwhelming at times.
Yeah, it can.
Yes, I mean it's definitely a groggy game. You get into it and you're not given like slightly better, but you're given things like this gave you a 1% more fuel efficiency, or you have another 0.5% armor thickness or something like that.
But buried in there are some like significant upgrades. So you do have to pay attention, because I got into the habit of just like clicking right through that stuff. But you do have to pay attention, because like some of the fleet tactics and stuff like that, they really do come in handy. So.
Oh yeah. I mean, and you get your little picture of your dudes. You got like your research wing, all looking all 18th century on you, and you got some nice little flair. But one that just popped up for me was something about Krupp steel.
What? I don't even know what that is.
A Krupp is, or was, it's Thyssen today, but it was a very, very large German industrial firm that pretty much made all the steel and naval stuff during World War I and World War II, and probably Franco-Prussian War for that matter.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, you kind of get that history that comes into it. And I guess it's worth pointing out, sometimes you don't know, like, I had no idea what casemate guns were when I first started playing this game.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that. I had no idea what it was before I started playing. So it works well as a teaching tool to some extent. My stepson actually sits down next to me when I'm playing it once in a while, and we'll do like the Battle of Jutland. And I think a lot of the ships in there are actually it's a historical order of battle. So we'll pick a ship and look it up online, and yeah, so it is. They're great learning tools, actually.
Oh yeah, I mean, I definitely, when I got it, you go to Wikipedia, and it's like disconnected from naval history. So you've got the Age of Sail, and you've got World War II that are both documented pretty well. But if you go and you say, "Boy, I need to find out what a casemate is," suddenly your amount of information really drops down.
It does. There are some like niche sites out there that have a ton of information on it, but yeah, and some cool YouTube videos I've seen linked that show how these large caliber rifles actually, well, they're not really rifles, I guess they're cannons, worked, and it's pretty hairy. I can't imagine operating one of those things.
Oh yeah, I mean it absolutely, and it's definitely cool when you start getting into it, and it's frustrating at first, but luckily the game has a auto design button. So when you start your design, you can go totally off the walls and then hit like verify design, and sometimes it just says illegal design. Yeah. Other times it'll tell you what you've done wrong. So a lot of times I'll start and just hit the auto design button and kind of work backwards from there.
I do too. Or also I just open up old designs and then use that as a starting point for like the next iteration of that class of ship. Okay,
yeah. Now, do you have a certain design preference that you go with? Does it end up being historical, or do you get kind of weird with it?
I think when I get weird is when I'm trying to get weird. A lot of the time, I will just go historical most of the time, just because it's effective. But like I was looking at your page with the giant casemate gun or the giant casemate ships and stuff, and they're, like you said, they're just not super effective. So
no, and that was my chance to kind of try something really weird. So the game kind of directs you historically, and you get research, and you get turrets, and you end up getting you start with, I think, single turrets, and then you get twin, and you can go all the way up to quad turrets if you get far enough in the game.
Yeah.
And then the original technology is this casemates, which is like, think a turret mounted into the side of the boat.
Yep.
And in my case, I said there's no turrets at all. And I had found a link where a guy did a playthrough, and I forget the name that the guy did. And I said, wow, that looks like a lot of fun. I'm going to try that. And they really did hold up well. But instead of a turret that can spin, you've got to spin the entire ship. And then if you get into nasty seas, these casemates can't work because they got to, close them off.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of them things where you run into a situation where it sounds good, and then you realize that you can't fight back.
Yeah. I always have secondary and tertiary guns as casemates, though. Very rarely do I use turrets, unless it's late game, and then I'll usually switch the secondary guns to like 10-inch turrets.
Yeah, it's because not often you have to worry about your secondary guns doing anything important other than chasing off destroyer or cruiser.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely cool how it goes once you start getting further in the game, because you start getting the plunging shots where you're shooting so far that your deck armor really becomes critical.
It does. Yep. It sure does.
Now, one thing I always kind of bothered me is, like the Battle of Jutland, when they started having the British battle cruisers detonate because of the ammo explosions. Now, I've never seen that in Rule of the Waves, so I don't know if it can happen. Have you ever run into anything like that?
I have. When I play Great Britain, I end up with more of that. I notice it more. So I think that they are prone to it. It'd be worth reading the modifiers, list the modifiers to that, because I have noticed it more with Great Britain, yes.
That's interesting, because it's cool when you can play a game and kind of get a historical feel out of it. And,
yeah.
Exploding British battlecruisers are definitely historical.
And that's one thing I think the game does well, is even though you're given freedom to, design your own crazy ships, the way it works, it kind of does restrain you to what would be appropriate at that time frame, which I think is pretty good design, actually.
Yeah, it definitely is. And it kind of rewards not only staying ahead of the design if you can, but trying to plan ahead. In your first few playthroughs, when you don't have any idea of what's coming next, it really makes it exciting.
Yeah, it does.
Now, I guess, what don't you like about Rule of the Waves?
There's a couple of interface quirks that I just don't like. I find myself in the middle of an engagement. I often find myself wishing I could look at the main window with, your what's in service, what's under construction, the map, and that kind of stuff. And they just don't allow you. So that kind of annoys me. There's not a whole lot that actually annoys me. The lack of diplomacy does annoy me. I think it would be easy to add like a diplomacy system similar to even like some of the old like Sid Meier's Civilizations or Master of Orion. Something just even that simple would go a long way in improving the game, especially since other countries won't go to war with each other. So it's always you against, you can go to the war with, I've only been to war with 2. I'm sure there's no limit. But yeah, I think that would be a major improvement. It's just even a simplistic diplomacy system. The graphics, I think they're a problem with the game because, first of all, I should say I don't mind them at all, and I actually appreciate and I really like them. But I think he would have sold a whole lot more copies had there been something a little bit better. I think that threw a lot of people off, or does throw a lot of people off. When you see it on Rock, Paper, Shotgun or something, and it just looks like a Windows 95 program, there's not a whole people that are going to run out and check that out. But personally, I actually like it because it's nice and clean. And like I said, you can see what's going on with the ships when you zoom in and stuff. And I grew up playing DOS games, so I don't exactly have a problem with simplistic graphics. So
No, I would agree on the graphics. I'll touch on the diplomacy. The first time I was kind of waiting for somebody else to go to war with somebody else.
yeah,
They kind of thinking I could dogpile in on it or even have cooperative fleets, and instead you just end up with like, nope, sorry, you're out of luck. You're just going to fight everybody. So I guess I can understand that it's probably a limitation in the programming, and I guess it's not a game breaker, but it would be neat to see a world war rather than just my war.
it would. Yeah, and you're probably right. It probably does have something. Just I don't know how many guys are actually on the dev team. I think it's just 2 or 3. It's not very many. So maybe even like a time constraint or something, just trying to get it done. It's one of those things they could be working on forever if they chose to.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's not even the focus of the game, so I can understand where they're coming. Graphics wise, I mean, you look at something like Atlantic Fleet and Cold Waters. I mean, add a good looking user interface and then put the 3D, watch your rounds strike without being in charge. I mean, you're talking a AAA game at that point.
You're at least going to sell a bunch of copies on Steam. But like I said, I think that would actually, for me, that would take away some of the charm because it is such. I think part of the reason it's so accessible is because the graphics are so simplistic, and they still give you a lot of information. Like you said, you can see when you're being fired at and things that are not hitting you, like because there is the little white fluffy clouds that I guess are supposed to be water splashing around you, and then there's a little red blip when you're hit or the enemy's hit. Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, you do get enough information. You can see when somebody's on fire. I always thought it's cool when you can see the smoke over the horizon. Like you don't know where they are, but you can start seeing smoke.
Yeah, or when you pop smoke, which I didn't even know was a thing until a couple months ago.
Yeah, and that does plays to the interface, and I'm not one of them sort of people that looks at the manual either.
Yeah, so am I.
Now, a lot of people have said, "Hey, we're really looking forward to Rule of the Waves 2," and I haven't heard a whole lot about it. I mean, have you?
Not much, just what's on the official forum. I don't think there's a lot of information out there except that they are working on it. I know that I believe they've said that they want it to either be a World War II focused game or scale to World War II, but that brings in things like carriers and, there's an air war there, which...
Does it work with the air war?
I have no idea. I really don't. I have my doubts, actually. I really do. I think the air war would almost have to be automated. Like maybe give directives. But other than that, I'm not sure. That would there would be so much micromanagement there. I don't know how enjoyable it would be. But
yeah, you'd have to do War in the Pacific style sectors, or something like War in the West does, where focus on here or there. So yeah, I kind of know what you mean. How do you? I mean, the technology side of it, I think, would work out well. You'd be able to have your escort carriers, your big enterprises, the little quirky carriers that they had that they were, merchant ships. But yeah, how do you put it all together?
I don't know. I think if they could find a way to automate it where you could give, some type of simple directive, or even like command style missions that were simplified. Okay. And give you the ability to design some of the aircraft on top of the ships, that would be really fun.
Yeah, that would be really cool to get a naval and an air layer in there, and hopefully they keep the a marine side of it or a landing side of it out. I mean, there is ground combat, but it's just kind of like, hey, do you think we should devote some resources to that, or should we give it all to the Navy?
Yeah, it's completely abstracted, which is good. Which, by the way, can be the armies. It's another thing I just learned a couple of months ago.
Oh, I'm sorry, you broke up through that one, so I didn't catch you there. But now we talked. Does it work with carriers? To go back a little bit, do you think that it'll work with Age of Sail?
I'm not familiar at all with that era, so I have no idea. The little bit I do know, I think it actually would work, and it would probably be really fun. But like I said, I have very little knowledge about that era, even less than I did World War I naval combat when I got into it. So
Yeah, that's one of my. I got into the Patrick O'Brien series, Master and Commander with Captain Jack Aubrey, and I would really like to play a game where you can get some accurate representations of the different technologies and the ships, and see how the cannons pan out, and kind of get that same interface, and get Battle of Trafalgar and stuff like that. But something else I'd like to see is more of a you read a lot in Castles of Steel or Dreadnought where there were certain naval commanders that had different traits, and they weren't all necessarily equal. So you might have a really aggressive battlecruiser commander or a very conservative light cruiser commander, and it's really not modeled in Rule of the Waves. I think that's kind of their miss. No, you could almost have an RPG element where you've got certain people in certain positions. Some of them are good and some of them are not. And the only way to either get rid of them might cost you prestige or vice versa. I mean, what do you think, a feature like that, does it fit or does it kind of go beyond the scope of the game?
I think that would fit, and actually that would be a lot of fun. What are you thinking though? Like, would they just give like bonus attributes to the ship, or would they be an AI controlled ship?
Yeah, I think ideally it would be, the AI. Hey, you've got this battlecruiser squadron, and it's got a very conservative guy, and maybe that AI acts a little bit different than your light cruiser guy that really wants to go out there and dive right into it. So to watch those two interact, maybe you're in charge of the battleships and you're trying to do your thing, but those battlecruisers want to hold back, and those light cruisers are dragging you in.
Yeah, actually, that would be a nice addition. I would like to see that.
I do wish there was a little more with the fog of war. I mean, sometimes you can see things where your light cruisers pop up and then they go away and then they pop up, which is cool. But then other times it seems like you get too much information.
Yeah, agreed. And it's you never know what you're going to get. Like when things pop in and out of the fog of war, like sometimes they come up as a battleship, and then the next time they pop up, they're a light cruiser, and it's like, come on, was no one keeping an eye on this? I mean, that part's a little annoying to me, but it doesn't make a difference in the long run because you're just chasing them down and trying to blow them up in the grand scheme of things. But
I know that definitely is historical. You read about it in some of those World War I naval battles, and between the rain in the North Sea and then the coal fog that was coming in, I mean, it could be really difficult to determine what you're looking at. And it's, them funny stories where battle cruisers go to chase a light cruiser thinking it's the whole German fleet or something like that.
Oh, okay. All right, well, that makes sense then.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it can be frustrating at times, or like the night fights. Sometimes the game drops you in and like you run your 5-minute turn and then it's suddenly battleships at 1,000 meters.
Yeah, or I tend to throw my ships on patrol during the night, and I've had that happen several times where all of a sudden there's just a whole fleet of battleships roll up on you, and when you're in patrol you're not exactly organized, so they just tear you to shreds, unfortunately.
Oh yeah, and it's I know the game has it where you can have your forces trained to kind of take care of it, but it really becomes difficult.
Yeah, there's not unless like I said, I play super aggressively and I always want to be at war. And when you're always at war, you don't exactly have time to be training your troops. That is another problem I have with the game, is it seems a little short. I wish there was a way to maybe shorten the turn length. I don't know if that's even possible. But what are the turn lengths? It's not like Steam of Iron where you can choose 1 to 3 weeks, is it? I don't think it is.
No, is it monthly?
I think it might be monthly. So it would be cool if you could go back and say, yeah, I want 1 week turns, just to stretch the game out a little bit more. Because, yeah, I mean, I've sat down and marathoned a game before, and it's like, yeah, I'd like this to be a little bit longer. And I know that you can play beyond as 1926, and I've done it a couple times, but it just doesn't feel right having steamships running around in the 50s. So
yeah, and it gets a little weird when you've got, quad batteries. What's the biggest you can get up to? Is it 16-inch?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Or is it 18s? It might be 18s.
Yeah, so now you're into the point where only the Japanese Yamato class, were they the only ones to run a gun that big?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so it definitely gets a little weird at that point. But, I mean, in its niche, from 1900 to even, 1920, I mean, it's a really good representation.
It is. Agreed.
Now, I wish there was the Zeppelins, to try to get that earlier air. I mean, you read sometimes, like the British Navy was afraid of getting near certain areas because there were Zeppelins there. And they were, like, nobody knew what the Zeppelins were going to do, but they were kind of this threat. So, like, you didn't want to get too close.
Oh, that would be nice, and it would give you a little bit more. Well, I don't know. I guess it depends. It could work as a scout, correct?
It could, but the radio technology at the time was to the point where, like, a radio might have been the size of a Buick.
Yeah. So that probably wouldn't work unless you're using.
I mean, yeah, yeah, and you get these weird moments in World War One where you get a pilot, and he'll be spotting for ground troops, and he'll land his plane in a field to give the really critical information because, and they got no way to get to the ground without landing. That chain of information became so slow.
Well, I know they use flags for most of the communication, correct?
Yeah, and I think they did have some wireless systems that were just coming on. And, you read about some moments where before they realized that, there was encryption and things like that. I think the Imperial Russian Navy got hit with that, where people were listening in to their conversations.
Oh. Well, that happened even in World War II, so.
Yeah, a little more in depth with the Japanese naval code cracking that happened in World War II.
Yeah, well, even I was just reading some big into the Eastern Front, and there's a while there the Germans kind of were listening to everything the Russians were doing. So,
yeah, I mean it's definitely an interesting time in history where there was that technological transition, and the game doesn't really hit on it too much, but it would definitely be neat if there was some ships with radios and some that didn't.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I don't think they model that at all, do they? I think once something is out of your line of sight, then they switch to AI, which kind of indicates that they're unable to communicate. So yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah, and when we say out of your line of sight, we even mean friendly forces. So if you've got a wing of light cruisers that you kind of lose track of for a minute, it'll pop up and say, hey, guess what? I think it gives you an option. Like, hey, do you want these to go? But I could be wrong.
I don't think so. I think they're AI, and then depending on the role you have them on. So if you have them like as a support role, then they'll typically turn it around and support whatever it is they were supporting. Whereas if you have them on independent, they'll just take off, and who knows if you'll ever see them again, which is frustrating.
Yeah, I would say probably 3 times out of 4, the AI tends to kind of do the right thing. Of course, there's not a lot going on. It's usually hold formation.
Yeah.
And every so often they just make a beeline for Egypt or something. I don't know where they're going.
Yeah. Well, one thing we haven't talked about is the different layers you can play as a Rear Admiral. What is it? There's Rear Admiral and then Captain's mode. What's the one in between there?
I'm drawing a... Is it Commodore mode?
I don't remember. I typically play as captain's mode because it does give you more freedom, and you're able to like take control of destroyers and run in and like manually target and fire torpedoes and stuff like that. I find that more enjoyable than.
Yeah, because normally I do the rear admiral, and a lot of the time it's really frustrating because it's like launch the goddamn torpedo.
Yeah, it is, and I think like you're basically limited to ordering a flotilla attack at that point, correct?
Yeah, you just say, hey, this group is going to attack that group, and that's it. And sometimes if there's a torpedo, I mean, you feel really, really lucky. Like, oh boy, when I know a lot of the World War I battles. I mean, there were torpedoes. They would use them to kind of screen movements. So you'd have an entire formation of destroyers that would all launch their torpedoes just to kind of deny that area to force, say, a line of battle cruisers to move.
Wow, that's really interesting and scary too.
Yeah, because in this game, when a torpedo hits, it's pretty much game over for the at least early game before you get the torpedo belt.
Yeah, early on it definitely is. And even later on, if you don't like manually take control of that ship and slow them down, have them just sit and get some flood control going on, it still is.
Yeah, so I mean, it's definitely a cool way that they've modeled that. But now, I guess I should bring. I mentioned this in the last episode where I asked Herp what his gay black Hitler moment was, and before I ask you what your gay black Kaiser moment is, I'm going to explain this. So on the Something Awful forums, there is a military history thread, and about once every 2 months, somebody comes in and says, "Hey, if the Germans had done this, could they have won World War II?" And this might be anything from if they had more tungsten, would their armor penetrators have been better, or if they would have done something else. And it ends up devolving into this month-long grudge thread where somebody finally says, what if Hitler was gay and black? And it becomes the most ridiculous thing in a situation. So because this is World War I and there's not a gay black Hitler, but there is a gay black Kaiser, what's the most ahistorical thing you've done in the game?
There's several things. Like trying to go all sub, like with Great Britain. Like I said, for some reason I can get away with it with Japan. I think I did it once. But with England it just doesn't work out. Like completely ignore certain classes of ships, like the large battleships, and just, build a bunch of battle cruisers and light cruisers, or skip battle cruisers and just build heavy cruisers, but give them a lot of speed. One thing I actually do quite often, and I don't know how effective it is, but just build heavy cruisers that are capable of traveling at 29 knots, and don't build light cruisers. And the place that messes you up is the engagements, because they're all, you don't get to pick engagements. So if there's a cruiser engagement and you don't have any light cruisers, you're kind of screwed. But I don't know. I guess those are the big ones. Nothing absolutely crazy though.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same. Usually, it's politically you can't get too terribly weird. You can't make Japan communist like it's Hearts of Iron.
Yeah,
but you can send forces to try to seize different colonies. That'll get you prestige, or maybe get you oil, which opens up more speed, less smoke. I don't think you have to worry about the coal fires.
Yeah,
but yeah, I've kind of been. I guess my big one is trying for fast battleships with a lot of torpedoes. Obviously it's ridiculous, but I kind of like the night engagements because you're right there. There's no hunting, there's no searching. You just get this immediate and sudden violence.
Yeah, I do that almost every game with battle cruisers. I'll have a class of battle cruiser that's basically just a giant torpedo boat, and that's what they're for. Yeah, it works really well for night engagements. You just drive them in there, and it's just death, which is really nice.
Yeah, because otherwise, if you stumble in there in the daytime, you're fairly well screwed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, when Rule the Waves 2 finally comes out, which I guess they haven't put any time frame on that. So I have no
No.
idea. This could be, next week, knowing how some of these marketing departments work, or it could be never. But I guess what's the biggest thing that you're hoping to see out of it?
I really would like to see them be successful with a World War II game. But like I said, there's a lot, especially with, the air, I don't know how they're going to tackle that. And if they do it successfully, then it's going to be great.
Yeah, I kind of hope the same, that you can, I guess one of the things I'd like is, some commercial success beyond just, the grog community or the boat nerd community.
Yeah.
But on top of it, it would be pretty cool to play this game as a multiplayer, even if you could only bring in 5 players and everybody's kind of doing their thing. But it could be, or maybe even just 2. It could make for a pretty interesting game.
It would. I don't know how you do it with the way that they elapse time. I don't know. I mean, I guess they do it with EU4 and stuff. I've never played a Paradox game multiplayer, so I don't know how that works. And Command Ops 2, you can play multiplayer, which I've always wondered how the heck does that work. So,
yeah, I guess you'd almost have to do it where the game moves at whoever's doing the slowest time setting.
Yeah, which, if you're running at normal, it could be some really long engagements. So I don't know how you solve that problem, but
yeah, you might actually have to kind of coordinate it a little bit and say, well, we'll mutually agree to take the speed up or down or something like that. But the tension side of it could be pretty neat.
Yeah, or another cool thing, I don't know, something I've thought of is give somebody control of like the political aspect of the game, especially if you add more to that. And then you play just the Navy, just the engagements. That's another way that you can get 2 people playing it, which might be fun if, the person that's involved with the political stuff is getting you into some nasty wars that maybe you shouldn't be in.
Yeah, I mean, if there were more of a, political decisions going on, that could be pretty interesting. I know some of the forum Let's Plays have really gotten interesting where, in case you're not familiar with it, that's where a group of people on a forums will kind of make the decisions, and then one person will play the game. So that group decision might say, let's attack France, or we think there should be more destroyers.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I don't remember who ran the last one on the forums, but some of them can get pretty interesting because you don't necessarily get the best thing, you get the most interesting thing.
Yeah, and I haven't actually paid attention or followed a Let's Play in a long time. I should actually fix that. Log on.
Yeah.
Check that forum out.
Yeah, I mean, and it kind of fits well to the era because you end up having people that are the, monocled curly mustache guy, that comes in and says, no, I think all of you are wrong, and we're going to have nothing but, destroyers. We're going to have, 80 destroyers in our Navy and 2 battleships, and that's it. And then he'll put that motion ahead, and then everybody will vote on it, and then the poor guy running the game's forced to try to suffer through it.
That's great. And I know you're running a big one. Are you still running that big one with Command?
Yeah. I mean, we're taking a break from it right now. We're in intermission. I'm just about to run another mission here. I'm just waiting on some audio files from one of our mercenaries.
That might be a good time for me to catch up then. I should do that so I can be up to date and follow it.
I don't know how many posts it's up to right now, but
it's a ton.
It's quite a monster. It's been a lot of fun. And I know that in Command, you do have, there are, just battleships and stuff like that. But as I recall, it doesn't model plunging fire. So I don't know how well it would do on really capturing that era. Supposedly, like the fire control model and the damage model is there.
For Command?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But without the plunging fire, I mean, that was the big thing where you were shooting so far that when those rounds were landing, they were coming in almost vertically instead of horizontally.
Well, that would explain why it's not so great at modeling even some of the World War II stuff. So I didn't realize that. I didn't know what the limiting factor was there.
Yeah, I think that's the big one, and then you also miss out on the design kind of fun.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I mean, it's Command definitely does better when probably I would say 1960 and after.
Yeah, yeah. Yep.
But yeah, there's definitely some good Let's Plays out there. I know there's some pretty good YouTube series. I know Tortuga Power did one that I was kind of watching. I think he just did one on Japan not long ago. That was pretty good.
Yeah, actually, I watched a little bit of that. And yeah, it was fun.
But yeah, it's a cool game, and I mean, I really wish there were more games on this style. You feel constrained at first, but once you work within the constraints, you don't get this almost paradox like freedom where everything feels kind of bland. They've really distilled the essence of the game, and that's what you play and nothing more.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think it really is. It's great design, and yeah, I wish there was more stuff out there like it.
Well, hey, do you have any more thoughts before we wrap it up here?
No, not really. Just that I also think that the Steam and Iron, the campaign games are just a few features shy of being almost as good as Rule of the Waves, one of which would be just to have your damn boats return to dock after everything's done out there, because it's really annoying just to be steaming along for 5 minutes just trying to dock everything. But other than that, I think they're great games, and I'm not sure that people give them the chance they deserve. So
yeah, I would agree. I mean, it's the graphics kind of throws people off, and that's one of them weird UI quirks is when a scenario's done, you've actually got to click like a leave scenario button, and it's not real obvious to you right off the bat. So
it is not.
The first time you're playing, you're like, well, how do I get out of this?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of fits in with the 10 minutes prior, you're waiting for a guy to literally email you a code.
Seems fitting.
Yeah, it does. Well, hey, Hedonist, we're going to wrap it up at that, man. I really appreciate you taking the time on your drive to come on, talk about Rule of the Waves.
Yeah,
and oh, man, it's a blast. And for those of you listeners that haven't checked out this game, give it a fair shake. I mean, this is really one of the gems that have come out in the last few years. The game is impressive, and it's a lot of fun. Well, all right, man. Well, hey, thanks much. And you listeners, you can get some more at TheStrategyGamer.com. Otherwise, leave us a review on iTunes or Cast or Stitcher or wherever else you get it from. And if there's something else that you would like to see us cover, hop on to our Discord and chat about bad games with us. All right, we're going to call it at that. And you guys all have yourself a great day. And thank you very much for listening.